Let me introduce you to Shahiran. He's a 40-year-old currently seeking refuge in Canada. Why? Because as a gay man, he now fears for his life if he goes back to his country, Brunei, if he's found guilty of practicing homosexuality. Now, you've probably not heard of Brunei before, but this is it here in South Asia. This tiny country near Vietnam and Cambodia, but absolutely tiny. The population actually only just over 400,000 people, but it's one of the world's richest countries, frequently in the top 5 wealthiest countries in the world because of its large oil reserves. The difficulty is for those people in the gay community living in that country, because this is the Sultan. They've imposed this very strict Islamic law. It's called Sharia law, and they've issued a penal code. Now, here in the Cube, we've looked through it, and these are some of the most stark, distressing, worrying things. If you're found guilty for sodomy, the death sentence is your charge by stoning. If you're found guilty for adultery, again, the death sentence by stoning. Amputation, if you're found guilty of stealing. Clearly very extreme. Now, this was precipitated in 2014. No one perhaps thought it would come in with such force, but the government issued on Saturday that this would be the reality. Now, the gay community have responded really with absolute shock, as you can imagine. Shahiran, who we've been speaking to, said yesterday to one of my colleagues in the Cube, "I didn't think this would really happen, and we go all the way to potentially being stoned to death. I am scared." Well, you can understand that that would be how he feels. And this has really been met with international condemnation. The UN Human Rights Group have said any religion-based legislation must not violate human rights, including the rights of those belonging to the majority of religion, as well as those of the non-believers as well. This came up in Parliament yesterday. Crispin Blunt said, you know, how can this be happening? As global human rights leader, the UK must do more to help mitigate this. Well, also, some other voices have been speaking out. Elton John and George Clooney, for example. George Clooney has said, you know, let's look at the wealth of this country. The Sultan owns 9 of the most glamorous, exclusive hotels in the world. He said, I'm not visiting any more of them. That's been echoed by Elton John. I commend my friend George Clooney for taking his stand against the anti-gay discrimination and bigotry. We will not visit these places from now on.